The spark of justice. The cold wind howled through the quiet streets of Chicago, carrying with it the distant hum of city life. In a modest two-story home on the South Side, 17-year-old Maya Brooks sat hunched over a thick law book, her highlighter gliding over key legal precedents. The room was dimly lit by a single desk lamp, and stacks of notebooks, case files, and loose papers surrounded her like a fortress of knowledge. Her grandmother, Clara Brooks, a retired school teacher with soft gray curls and kind eyes, peeked into the room. "Maya, sweetheart, you've been at this for hours. Get some rest." "I will, Grandma," Maya replied without looking up. "Just need to finish this section." Clara sighed, stepping into the room and placing a gentle hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "You're brilliant, Maya, but even geniuses need sleep." Maya finally looked up, offering a small, tired smile. "I know. I feel like I'm running out of time." Clara sat on the edge of the bed. "Running out of time for what, sweetheart?" Maya hesitated. "To do something that matters." Her grandmother studied her for a moment before nodding. "You're already doing that, Maya, but you can't help the world if you burn yourself out before you get started." Maya exhaled and set her highlighter down. Okay. 5 more minutes." Clara chuckled and left the room, but Maya knew sleep wouldn't come easy. There was always another case to study, another injustice to unravel. She had been a legal prodigy since childhood, consuming law books while other kids played video games. By the time she was 12, she was winning debates against college students. But despite her extraordinary mind, she had never sought the spotlight. She preferred to work in the shadows, helping where she could. That all changed the day she overheard a desperate mother crying in the corner store. It was a chilly afternoon when Maya and Clara stopped by the local market to pick up groceries. As they waited in line, Maya overheard a distressed conversation between the cashier and a woman with tired eyes, and 2 young children clinging to her legs. "Please, I have nowhere else to go," the woman pleaded. "I've paid every cent on time. I followed the lease." "He's lying." The cashier shook his head sympathetically. "I'm sorry, Teresa. I don't know what to tell you. If your landlord's kicking you out, you need a lawyer." The woman, Teresa Carter, wiped her eyes, her voice cracking. "I can't afford a lawyer." Maya's heart clenched. She recognized that tone: helplessness, frustration, despair. Before she could second-guess herself, she stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm but kind. "What exactly did your landlord say?" Teresa looked at her, startled. "Who are you?" "My name is Maya Brooks. I think I can help you." The woman frowned. "You're a kid." Maya smiled faintly. "I've been told that before, but trust me, I know what I'm doing." Clara, familiar with Maya's drive, simply sighed and handed her the grocery bag. "I'll meet you at home, sweetheart. Be careful." Maya nodded before turning back to Teresa. "Can you tell me what happened?" Teresa hesitated but finally relented. "My landlord claims I violated the lease by having too many people living in my apartment, but it's just me and my kids." Maya nodded. "Do you have proof that you've paid rent on time?" "Copies of your lease." Teresa pulled a crumpled envelope from her purse. "I have everything." Maya scanned the documents quickly. The wording on the eviction notice was vague, almost as if the landlord hoped Teresa wouldn't question it. "This is illegal," Maya murmured, her brain already working. "I can help you fight this." Teresa looked at her skeptically. "And how exactly are you going to do that?" Maya smiled. "By doing what I do best, winning." Over the next few days, Maya locked herself in her room, poring over every detail of Teresa's case. The eviction notice was full of inconsistencies. The landlord had no real evidence, and from what Maya could tell, he was likely trying to push Teresa out to raise the rent for a new tenant. Maya drafted a formal letter challenging the eviction, citing relevant housing laws and precedents. She even threatened legal action if the landlord didn't comply. When the letter was ignored, Maya helped Teresa file a case in small claims court. The moment news spread that the quiet, bookish teenager was standing up to a landlord, the neighborhood took notice. "That girl's got guts," muttered one shop owner. "Does she even know what she's doing?" scoffed a skeptical old man. But Maya didn't care about the whispers. She only cared about justice. As the court date approached, Teresa grew more anxious. "What if we lose?" she asked one night as they sat in her tiny kitchen. Maya tapped her pen against the table. "We won't. The law is on our side." "But you're not a lawyer," Teresa pointed out. Maya gave her a knowing look. "Not officially." Teresa stared at her. "Wait, what does that mean?" Maya hesitated before sighing. "I passed the bar exam when I was 16. Teresa's jaw dropped. "You what?" "I never told anyone," Maya admitted. "I didn't want the attention. But I knew I could do it, so I took the exam in another state where they allow early testing. I've been waiting for the right moment to use it." Teresa shook her head in disbelief. "So, you're an actual attorney?" "Technically," Maya said with a shrug. "But I kept it quiet because people judge based on age, not ability." Teresa exhaled, rubbing her temples. "And I thought I had a crazy life." Maya chuckled. "Well, now you know. And don't worry, I'm going to make sure you and your kids have a home." The day of the trial arrived. The small courtroom was packed with spectators, journalists, and even a few lawyers curious about the so-called child attorney. Maya stood at the plaintiff's table, dressed in a simple navy blazer and skirt, her posture composed, her expression unreadable. Then, Judge Patterson entered the room. The moment he saw Maya, his lips twisted in amusement. "And who are you supposed to be?" he asked, his voice laced with condescension. Maya straightened. "I'm representing the plaintiff, Your Honor." The courtroom rippled with whispers. The judge chuckled, shaking his head. "This is a joke, right? A school project?" Maya didn't flinch. "No, Your Honor. This is a legal proceeding, and my client has the right to representation." The judge leaned forward, his amusement fading. "Young lady, this is a courtroom, not a school play. Do you even know what you're doing?" Maya met his gaze without hesitation. "I do, Your Honor, and I intend to prove it." The judge sighed. "Fine, but don't waste my time." Maya nodded. "I wouldn't dream of it." With that, the trial began. Maya listened as the landlord's attorney presented his case, spinning a narrative of lease violations and legal justifications. When it was her turn, she dismantled their arguments piece by piece. She cited legal precedents, questioned the landlord's credibility, and exposed his inconsistencies with the skill of a seasoned lawyer. The courtroom grew quieter as she spoke. The reporters scribbled furiously. Even Judge Patterson seemed intrigued. Then, when the prosecutor interrupted her, challenging her credentials, Maya calmly reached into her satchel, pulled out a pristine legal document, and handed it to the bailiff. The judge read it. His face paled. Silence fell. Who are you?" he stammered. Maya smiled. "Maya Brooks, attorney at law." The courtroom erupted into chaos. And this was only the beginning. The battle begins. The courtroom buzzed with energy as Maya Brooks stood firm, her hands resting lightly on the plaintiff's table. She could feel the weight of 100 stares pressing down on her, from skeptical lawyers to stunned spectators who had come expecting a sideshow and instead witnessed something extraordinary. Judge Patterson, whose face had been twisted in amused condescension moments ago, now looked as if the floor had been pulled out from beneath him. He reread the document Maya had presented, his eyes flicking between the paper and the teenager standing before him. "You're telling me," he said slowly, each word measured, "that you, a 17-year-old, are a licensed attorney?" Maya nodded once. "That's correct, Your Honor." A hush fell over the courtroom. Even the landlord, Howard Reynolds, who had been lounging in his chair with a smug grin, now sat up straight, his face contorted in confusion. His attorney, Walter Cole, was the first to break the silence. Your Honor, Cole said, barely concealing his irritation, this is highly irregular. A child. A licensed attorney, Maya corrected smoothly. Cole exhaled sharply, then continued. A very young attorney standing before the court is unprecedented. I move to request an independent verification of her credentials before we proceed. Judge Patterson glanced at Maya, his fingers tightening around the document. His pride wouldn't allow him to admit he had severely misjudged her, but Maya saw the flicker of unease in his eyes. He turned to the bailiff. Have the court verify this immediately. The bailiff took the papers and exited. While they waited, Patterson turned to Maya. Regardless of your qualifications, Miss Brooks, I strongly advise you to conduct yourself with the utmost professionalism. This is not a school debate. Maya met his gaze steadily. I understand, Your Honor, and I assure you I am fully prepared. The judge sighed, rubbing his temple. Fine. We will proceed cautiously until verification is complete. He turned to Cole. Mr. Cole, continue with your argument. Cole hesitated, clearly rattled, but he recovered quickly. Thank you, Your Honor. He faced the jury, adjusting his tie as he began his opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple. My client, Mr. Reynolds, is the lawful owner of the property in question. He has provided the plaintiff with a place to live, and in return, she has violated the lease agreement, an agreement she signed and agreed to abide by. Maya's jaw tightened. Here we go. Cole paced the floor, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had won countless cases through intimidation. Miss Carter's claim that she is being unfairly evicted is a desperate attempt to avoid the consequences of her actions. The lease clearly states that additional occupants beyond the primary tenant must be approved by the landlord. Yet Miss Carter has had multiple individuals coming and going from her unit. Witnesses will testify to that fact. Maya scribbled notes furiously, already poking holes in his argument. Who are these so-called witnesses? Did anyone actually report a complaint? Where's the written documentation? Cole finished his speech and took his seat. The judge turned to Maya. Miss Brooks, your opening statement. She stood, adjusting her blazer before walking toward the jury. She let the silence stretch for a few seconds before speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice clear and calm. This case isn't just about a lease agreement. It's about power. It's about a wealthy landlord trying to bully a single mother out of her home without just cause. A murmur spread through the room. Cole's eyes narrowed, and Reynolds' face darkened. Maya took a slow step forward, her expression serious. Mr. Reynolds claims Miss Carter violated her lease, but what he fails to mention is that he has a history of forcing out long-term tenants whenever he wants to increase the rent. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. Judge Patterson's gaze sharpened. That got his attention. Over the course of this trial, I will present evidence that proves Mr. Reynolds' real motive isn't fair enforcement of a lease. It's greed. And when a tenant stands up to him, he resorts to intimidation and deceit. She turned slightly toward Reynolds. But that ends today. Cole immediately stood. Objection. That's inflammatory language. Sustained. Judge Patterson said, though Maya noticed he didn't reprimand her as harshly as before. Maya inclined her head slightly. Understood, Your Honor. I'll let the evidence speak for itself. She returned to her seat, feeling Teresa squeeze her hand under the table. You're amazing, Teresa whispered. Maya simply nodded, but inside, her nerves were thrumming. This was only the beginning. The evidence war. The trial continued, and Maya meticulously dismantled the landlord's arguments. The lease violation argument. Cole presented two maintenance workers who claimed they had seen multiple people entering and leaving Teresa's apartment. Maya cross-examined them sharply, pointing out that neither had documented any violations or reported concerns until after the eviction notice was issued. One of the workers hesitated under Maya's scrutiny. Well, I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. But now suddenly it is. Maya asked pointedly. The rent payment argument. Cole produced financial statements suggesting Teresa had struggled to pay rent. Maya countered by showing Teresa's bank statements, proving that she had never missed a payment. Is it common practice, Mr. Cole, for landlords to issue eviction notices to tenants who pay on time? She asked. The witness testimony twist. Maya had subpoenaed 3 other tenants from Reynolds properties. They testified about similar eviction attempts, confirming Maya's claim that Reynolds targeted long-term tenants to raise rents. Cole objected, but Patterson allowed it, and the judge's expression grew increasingly grim. As the trial progressed, it became clear that Maya had cornered Reynolds. But then, Cole made his next move. The setup. This, Cole said, dramatically holding up a new document, is evidence that Miss Carter has been receiving unreported income through an illegal daycare operation in her apartment. Gasps filled the courtroom. Maya tensed. What? Cole handed the papers to the bailiff, who passed them to Judge Patterson. Your Honor, this proves that Miss Carter has been deceiving the court and her landlord. Maya glanced at Teresa, who looked pale as a ghost. I don't know what that is, Teresa whispered in panic. Maya kept her expression calm, but inside, her mind was racing. She needed to see those documents now. Judge Patterson frowned. Miss Brooks, do you wish to review these? Yes, Your Honor. Maya flipped through the pages quickly. The transactions looked legitimate, but something was off. The accounts were linked to an unknown company, one she had never seen before. A cold realization hit her. This was planted. She turned to Cole, her expression unreadable. Your Honor, I request time to investigate the source of these documents. Given the landlord's history of manipulating records, I believe this evidence is highly suspect. Cole's smirk faltered, but he quickly recovered. The documents speak for themselves. Judge Patterson glanced at Maya. You have 24 hours to investigate. Maya nodded. That's all I need. But as she left the courtroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Someone didn't want her to win, and they were willing to play dirty to stop her. The trap tightens. The moment Maya stepped out of the courtroom, the weight of the new accusations settled on her shoulders. She could feel Teresa trembling beside her, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. This isn't real, Teresa whispered, her voice laced with fear. I've never run a daycare. I've never even babysat someone else's kids, let alone made money from it. Maya placed a reassuring hand on Teresa's shoulder. I believe you. And now, we just have to prove it. They exited the courthouse into the cold Chicago air. A swarm of reporters had gathered, their cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Miss Brooks, do you have a statement on the new evidence? How do you respond to claims that your client has been hiding income? Does this change the case? Maya squared her shoulders, forcing calm into her voice. This is yet another stalling tactic from the defense. We will be reviewing this so-called evidence, and I am confident the truth will come to light. She guided Teresa away from the crowd, ignoring the barrage of questions. As they reached the sidewalk, Maya's phone buzzed. It was Aaron, her tech-savvy friend and researcher. Tell me you saw this coming, he said the moment she answered. Maya sighed. I didn't, but I should have. Well, you're gonna want to hear this, Aaron said, his fingers clicking over a keyboard. I ran a quick search on that business name listed in the financial records. Little Steps Daycare. The company is real, but get this, it was only registered 3 weeks ago. Maya stopped walking. Teresa, sensing her tension, turned to look at her. 3 weeks ago, Maya echoed. Yep, Aaron confirmed. And the registered owner, a corporation that traces back to a shell company. And guess who owns it? Maya clenched her jaw. Reynolds. Yep, Aaron confirmed. This isn't just a mistake. They set her up. They created a fake daycare business, linked it to her name, and fabricated financial records to make it look like she was earning money she never saw. Maya exhaled sharply. The lengths these people were willing to go to in order to win were staggering. "This is fraud," Maya said, gripping her phone tighter. "No kidding," Aaron said, "but we need hard proof. I'll keep digging, but you need to be ready." They wouldn't pull a move this big unless they had a plan to back it up. Maya nodded, determination flooding her veins. "Find me everything you can, Aaron. And hurry. We only have 24 hours. The plan to strike back." That night, Maya didn't sleep. She sat in her grandmother's living room, her laptop glowing in the dim light, as she cross-checked every document Aaron had sent her. Across the table, Teresa sat in silence, hugging a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her mind clearly running through worst-case scenarios. "I don't understand," Teresa whispered. "How do they even make something like this up? Won't the judge see it's fake?" Maya sighed. "It's not that simple. The records look real. On paper, everything checks out. The bank statements, the tax forms, the transfers. They covered their tracks well." Teresa stared at her, fear flickering in her eyes. "So, what do we do?" Maya tapped her laptop screen, showing Teresa a spreadsheet Aaron had compiled. "We prove that it's impossible for you to have run this business," Maya explained. "We show that you had no access to this money. We connect the fake daycare to Reynolds, and we expose every lie they've built." Teresa swallowed hard. "How?" "First, we need to follow the money trail," Maya said. "Reynolds created this shell company, but money has to go somewhere. If we can prove that the funds never actually reached you, it shatters their whole case." Teresa nodded slowly, some of the fear in her eyes replaced with determination. Maya smiled slightly. "And second, we need a witness. The key witness." By morning, Aaron had struck gold. "You're gonna love this," he said over the phone. "I found a guy, Derek Lawson, a former accountant for Reynolds Property Management Company. He quit last year, and guess what? He's been leaving reviews online about Reynolds being a crook." Maya grinned. "Think he'd be willing to talk?" "Already reached out," Aaron said. "He's bitter, and he's got receipts. Bank transfers, internal emails. He saw Reynolds moving money around to fake companies." Maya's pulse quickened. "Send me everything." And set up a meeting. Courtroom showdown. The next morning, Maya and Teresa walked into the packed courtroom. The defense sat smugly, expecting Maya to crumble. She didn't. The moment court resumed, Maya stood. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I request to submit new evidence that proves the defense's financial records are fraudulent." Judge Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Maya turned to the bailiff. "I'd like to call Derek Lawson to the stand." A stir spread through the room. Cole's face paled slightly as Derek Lawson, dressed in a gray suit, took the witness stand. Maya approached calmly. "Mr. Lawson, can you tell the court what your former job was?" Lawson cleared his throat. "I was an accountant for Mr. Reynolds' Property Management Company." "And did you handle financial transactions?" "Yes," Lawson confirmed. "And I saw some very shady things." The courtroom murmured. Maya nodded. "Can you elaborate?" Lawson nodded. "I saw Mr. Reynolds create fake businesses to funnel money into. He did this to make it seem like tenants had extra income, so he could justify raising rents or forcing evictions. I personally processed several of these transactions." Cole jumped up. "Objection. Speculation." Judge Patterson held up a hand. "Do you have evidence, Mr. Lawson?" Lawson pulled out a USB drive. "Yes, Your Honor. I saved emails, transaction records, and internal memos detailing the setup of fake accounts, including the one in question." "Little Steps Daycare." A collective gasp filled the room. Judge Patterson gestured for the bailiff to take the drive. He skimmed the printed documents, his frown deepening with each page. Maya took a step forward. "Your Honor, this evidence proves that the financial records presented by the defense were manipulated. The daycare never existed. The transactions were forged to frame my client. and Mr. Reynolds orchestrated the entire scheme. Reynolds' attorney, Walter Cole, had gone rigid. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Judge Patterson slowly placed the papers down. Then he turned to Cole. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, his voice dangerously low, "do you have a rebuttal to this?" Cole licked his lips. "Your Honor, wait." Judge Patterson slammed his gavel. "This court will be reviewing this evidence immediately. If these claims hold up, Mr. Reynolds and his legal team may be subject to criminal investigation." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Maya turned to Teresa and squeezed her hand. "We did it," she whispered. Teresa nodded, eyes brimming with tears. "We really did." But even as the courtroom descended into chaos, Maya knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about Reynolds anymore. Someone far more powerful was pulling the strings. And she had just declared war. Shadows in the system. The gavel's thunderous crack echoed through the courtroom, but Maya barely heard it over the pounding in her ears. The walls were closing in around Reynolds and his legal team, their carefully constructed lies crumbling beneath the weight of hard evidence. But Maya knew better than to celebrate too soon. This was far from over. Reynolds was a pawn in a much bigger game, and Maya had just declared war on whoever was pulling his strings. She felt Teresa's trembling hand squeeze hers under the table. "Maya, what happens now?" Maya inhaled deeply, keeping her voice steady. "Now, we keep fighting. We're not backing down." Judge Patterson adjusted his glasses, his face unreadable as he addressed the courtroom. "Given the seriousness of these revelations, this court will adjourn for the day while we review the newly submitted evidence." Maya's stomach tightened. That was good and bad. It meant they had a chance to expose Reynolds' entire scam, but it also gave the opposition time to retaliate. And she knew they would. As the judge exited and people began filing out, a storm of voices erupted around them. Journalists, lawyers, and courtroom spectators all whispering, speculating. But Maya's eyes locked on one person, Walter Cole. Reynolds' attorney wasn't celebrating. He wasn't gloating. Instead, he was stiff, his fingers tightening around the handle of his briefcase. His eyes flicked toward the exit, his usual smug expression replaced with something she hadn't seen before, fear. And that's when Maya knew. He wasn't in control anymore either. The warning. Maya, Teresa, and Aaron met in a small diner a few blocks from the courthouse. It was a quiet, no-frills place where people barely glanced up from their coffee. That's exactly what Maya needed right now, neutral ground. Aaron slid into the booth across from her, already typing furiously on his laptop. "You're not gonna like this," he muttered. Maya sighed. "You never have good news. This isn't bad. It's just bigger than we thought." He turned the screen toward her. "Check this out." Maya leaned forward. On the screen was a list of transactions, some dating back years. Each one led to shell corporations, *** fake companies, *** that tied back to Reynolds' real estate empire. Her eyebrows furrowed. We already knew Reynolds was laundering money. Aaron shook his head. "Yeah, but here's the kicker. He's not the one at the top." He clicked a few more times, bringing up an organizational chart. At the top, highlighted in red, was a name Maya didn't recognize. Concord Holdings. "Who the hell is that?" Teresa asked, her voice hushed. Aaron glanced around before lowering his voice. "It's a massive investment firm. They own real estate, banks, security companies, everything. And guess what? Reynolds works for them." Maya sat back, her mind racing. "This isn't just about Reynolds," Aaron continued. "He's just a frontman. The real power, it's above him." Teresa looked between them, fear creeping into her expression. "What does that mean for us?" Maya exhaled. "It means we just punched a giant, and giants don't like being punched." As if on cue, the bell over the diner's door chimed. A tall, sharply dressed man walked in, scanning the room like he was assessing threats. His gaze landed on Maya's table, and a cold smile touched his lips. He walked toward them. Every instinct in Maya's body screamed danger. "Miss Brooks," the man said smoothly, stopping beside the booth. His voice was polite, but there was an edge to it, like a knife hidden beneath silk. "Mind if I sit?" Maya didn't move. "Depends. Who are you?" The man chuckled. "Lucas Harper, private investigator." He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "I work for interested parties." Aaron stiffened beside her. Maya glanced at the card. It was blank except for his name and a number. "Let me guess," she said, folding her arms. "You're here to make me an offer. Drop the case, walk away, or else." Harper grinned. "See, you are a smart girl." Teresa swallowed hard. Aaron, never good at keeping his cool, scowled. "Is that a threat?" Harper's smile didn't falter. "No, just some friendly advice." His eyes locked onto Maya's. "You're playing in a world you don't understand, kid. Do yourself a favor. Walk away before you get hurt." Maya met his stare without flinching. "Tell your interested parties that I don't scare easily." Harper chuckled. "I figured you'd say that." He stood, adjusting his suit jacket. "I had to try. But if you won't listen, well." His eyes darkened. "Let's just hope the people around you don't pay the price for your stubbornness." Maya's blood ran cold. He turned and walked out. Teresa let out a shaky breath. "Maya, this is getting dangerous." Maya clenched her fists. It already was. The fight back. Maya spent the next 12 hours digging through every scrap of information they had on Concord Holdings. If they were behind Reynolds, then they were the real enemy. By midnight, Aaron had found something huge. They owned the bank that processed Teresa's fake financial records. Maya's eyes widened. "Wait, you're saying they forged the evidence from their own bank?" Aaron grinned. "Yep. And that means they left a paper trail." Courtroom battle. Round 2. The next morning, Maya walked into the courtroom ready for war. Cole looked shaken, but he still tried. "Your Honor," Cole began, standing stiffly. "The defense maintains that the financial records provided are accurate." Maya cut him off, standing smoothly. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce evidence proving that the financial records were forged by a bank owned by Concord Holdings, the same company that funds Mr. Reynolds." The room froze. Judge Patterson's eyes narrowed. "You have proof of this." Maya walked to the front, handing the judge a packet of documents. "Yes, Your Honor. These are transaction logs showing how the bank, which is directly tied to Concord Holdings, altered financial records to frame my client." Patterson's expression darkened. He turned to Cole. "Do you have a response, Mr. Cole?" Cole's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He had nothing. Judge Patterson exhaled sharply and slammed his gavel. "This court will not tolerate manipulation of evidence. Given this and the pattern of misconduct presented, I find that the eviction against Miss Carter is unjustified and fraudulent. I rule in favor of the plaintiff." A wave of cheers erupted through the room. Teresa burst into tears. "Maya, we won." Maya nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Yeah, we did." But as she glanced toward the back of the courtroom, she saw Harper. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't clapping. He simply watched her, his dark eyes unreadable. And Maya knew. This war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The aftermath of victory. The courtroom was still humming with whispers as Maya led Teresa out of the building, her heart pounding in her chest. The victory was huge, but something felt off, like a puzzle piece was missing. She knew why. The fight was supposed to end here. The case was clear-cut. The judge had ruled in their favor, and Reynolds' corruption had been exposed. So why didn't it feel over? Teresa wiped her eyes, still overwhelmed with emotion. "Maya, I can't thank you enough. I don't even know how to." Maya gave her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "You don't have to, Teresa. This was never just about you. This was about making sure people like Reynolds don't get away with this ever again. Teresa nodded, but her expression turned wary as she glanced around. We should get out of here. People are staring. She wasn't wrong. The crowd of reporters outside was growing, cameras flashing, voices calling Maya's name. Miss Brooks, a moment, please. How does it feel to win your first major case? Do you plan on taking on more legal battles? Before Maya could respond, a black SUV rolled up to the curb. Her stomach dropped. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Lucas Harper. His dark eyes studied her, calculating. Congratulations, counselor, he said smoothly, his voice just loud enough to be heard over the commotion. You must be proud. Maya stared him down. I did what was right. I don't expect you to understand. Harper chuckled. Oh, I understand perfectly. You won your little case. But tell me, Miss Brooks, do you really think it's over? Maya's fingers curled into fists. You tell whoever you work for that I'm not scared of them. Harper's smile widened. Scared? No, but you should be smart. His gaze flicked toward Teresa. And careful. The door of the SUV swung open, and for a brief moment, Maya saw another man inside, older, suited with an air of authority. His face was partially hidden, but there was something cold about him. This wasn't just about Reynolds. This went higher. Harper leaned back and tapped the side of the car. Enjoy your win, kid. The window rolled up, and the SUV pulled away, disappearing into the city. A target on her back. Later that night, Maya sat in her grandmother's living room, scrolling through the news articles that had already exploded online. Teen prodigy lawyer exposes corrupt landlord in landmark case. 17-year-old attorney takes down powerful slumlord. Maya Brooks, a legal genius or just lucky. Clara entered the room, setting a cup of chamomile tea on the table. Your name is everywhere, sweetheart. Maya sighed. Yeah, I noticed. Clara sat beside her, watching Maya's tense posture. You won, Maya. You did what you set out to do. Then why doesn't it feel like a win? Maya murmured. Clara gave her a knowing look. Because you're smart enough to know this fight is bigger than one case. Maya exhaled. I don't know what to do, Grandma. I thought Reynolds was the problem, but he's just the face of it. There's something bigger behind this. Concord Holdings, the people Harper works for. They're the ones really pulling the strings. Clara sipped her tea. So, what are you going to do? Maya hesitated, staring at the screen where her own face was plastered in a headline. I don't know, but I can't ignore this. As she spoke, her phone buzzed. Aaron's name flashed on the screen. Hey, she answered. What's up? Bad news, Aaron said immediately. I've been digging more into Concord Holdings. They're dangerous, Maya. Not just legally, they've got muscle. Private security firms, ex-military guys on payroll. And, he paused, his voice lowering. I think they're watching us. Maya's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I mean my systems picked up someone trying to trace my location. I had to reroute my IP through 3 different proxies. Someone's looking into me. And probably you too. Maya gritted her teeth. They're trying to intimidate us. Yeah, well, it's working, Aaron muttered. Maya, this isn't some greedy landlord. This is organized, high-level corruption. You keep digging, and they'll come after you. Maya rubbed her forehead. I'm not stopping, Aaron. Aaron sighed. I knew you'd say that. A knock sounded at the front door. Maya froze. Clara's eyebrows knitted in concern, expecting someone. Maya shook her head and stood cautiously. She walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. A man stood outside. Older, dressed in a dark coat. His posture was stiff, almost military. Maya's pulse quickened. She cracked the door open slightly. Can I help you? The man's eyes studied her for a moment before he spoke. You need to stop digging. Maya's grip on the door tightened. Excuse me. The man's voice was low, deliberate. You won your case. Leave it at that. You don't know what you're dealing with. Maya narrowed her eyes. And who do you work for? The man's lips curled slightly, but it wasn't a smile. You already know the answer to that. Maya held her ground. If you're here to scare me, you'll have to try harder. The man's expression remained unreadable. Consider this your only warning. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Maya slammed the door shut, her heart racing. Clara stood behind her, eyes full of worry. Maya, this is getting serious. Maya nodded, her mind already working through the possibilities. I know, Grandma. She turned, walking back to her laptop, her jaw set in determination. But so am I. The next move. The next morning, Maya met Aaron at a coffee shop, their usual spot when they needed to talk in private. Aaron was tense, his fingers drumming against the table. So, some random government-looking dude shows up at your door. That's a bad sign. Maya sipped her coffee, unfazed. It means I'm onto something. Aaron sighed. You ever think about just, I don't know, taking a break? You already won the case. You did your job. Maya leaned forward. And how many more people are being forced out of their homes right now? How many other landlords are doing exactly what Reynolds did, only they haven't been caught yet? Aaron groaned. I hate that you have a point. Maya smiled slightly. Good, because we're not done yet. Aaron rubbed his temples. Fine, but if we're doing this, we need to be smarter. If Concord Holdings is really running this, then we need to find something they can't bury. Maya's eyes gleamed. Then let's find it. Aaron exhaled, cracking his knuckles. All right, but if we get black-bagged in the middle of the night, I'm blaming you. Maya smirked. Deal. As they opened their laptops and got to work, Maya felt the weight of something bigger than herself pressing down on her. She had just exposed a corrupt landlord. Now she was about to take on an empire. And she had no intention of losing. The empire strikes back. Maya Brooks had spent the past year learning the law, mastering it. She had dissected case after case, studying every legal loophole, every precedent, every dirty trick corporations used to crush people like Teresa Carter. But this wasn't just another case. This was a war. And she had just fired the first shot. The silent threat. The morning after the courtroom victory, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, her laptop glowing in the dim light of her room. She hadn't slept. She barely even blinked as she combed through the data Aaron had compiled. Concord Holdings, a name that, until yesterday, had been buried under layers of shell companies, fake bank accounts, and legal smokescreens. And now it had eyes on her. Her phone buzzed. Aaron, you alone? Maya frowned and typed back. Maya, yeah, why? Aaron, check your email. Now. Her heartbeat quickened as she opened her inbox. A new message sat at the top. No sender, no subject. She hesitated, then clicked. There was no text, just an image. A photo of her and Clara leaving the courthouse the night before. Maya's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't taken by a journalist. This was surveillance. Her fingers flew over her phone. Maya. Aaron, tell me you sent that. Aaron. Not me. Someone wants you to know they're watching. Maya's grip tightened around her phone. This wasn't just about the case anymore. They were coming for her. A warning from the judge. Maya arrived at the courthouse later that morning, her bag slung over her shoulder, her steps measured. Teresa was meeting with her kids today, finally able to breathe after months of uncertainty. But Maya, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. As she reached the courtroom doors, she was stopped by a familiar voice. Miss Brooks. She turned to see Judge Patterson standing just outside his chambers, arms folded, his gaze unreadable. Step inside for a moment, he said, motioning her in. Maya's stomach tightened. Judges didn't just call private meetings without a reason. She followed him in, and the door shut behind them. Patterson turned to her, his jaw clenched. "I need you to listen very carefully." Maya nodded, staying silent. "You won that case because the law was on your side," Patterson said. "But you made some very powerful enemies in the process." Maya exhaled slowly. "Concord Holdings." The judge's eye twitched. "So, you do understand." Maya sat down across from him. "Who are they, really?" Patterson hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "They don't just own properties, Miss Brooks. They own judges, police, legislators. They keep their hands clean while people like Reynolds do their dirty work. And you." He exhaled sharply. "You just pulled back the curtain." Maya's fists clenched. "So what? They're above the law." Patterson gave a bitter laugh. "No one's above the law. But people like them. They rewrite it." Maya's heart pounded. "Are you telling me to drop this?" Patterson leaned forward, his voice lowering. "I'm telling you that if you keep pushing, they will make an example out of you." Maya stared him down. "Let them try." The judge's lips parted slightly, as if surprised. But then he sighed, rubbing his temple. "You remind me of someone," he muttered. "Someone who didn't know when to back down either." "Did they win?" Maya asked. The judge studied her, then leaned back in his chair. "They're not around anymore." A chill ran down Maya's spine. Patterson stood. "Be careful, Miss Brooks. There are cases worth fighting for, and there are battles that can cost you everything. Learn the difference." Maya met his gaze. "What if I can't?" The judge gave her a tired smile. "Then I hope you have a damn good strategy." The leak. By the time Maya left the courthouse, Aaron was already waiting outside in his car. She slid into the passenger seat, tossing her bag onto the floor. "Tell me you have something." Aaron ran a hand through his hair, his laptop open on the dashboard. "Not just something. I have a ticking time bomb." Maya arched an eyebrow. "Go on." Aaron turned the screen toward her. "So I kept digging into Concord Holdings' financial records. Turns out they don't just fund slumlords like Reynolds." He clicked a file, and Maya's eyes widened. "They're also laundering money through police contracts, construction projects, even city council campaigns. This isn't just corrupt landlords. This is political." Maya exhaled. "This is bigger than I thought." Aaron gave her a tight smile. "Yeah, and it gets worse." He pulled up another document. "They're linked to a judge." Maya's blood ran cold. "Which judge?" Aaron hesitated. "Patterson." The trap tightens. Maya sat in silence, the weight of what Aaron had just said pressing down on her like a vice. Judge Patterson, the same man who had warned her. Was he involved? Aaron watched her carefully. "I know you like him, Maya, but if he's tied to this, we need to be smart." Maya took a slow breath. "We need proof first." Aaron nodded. "I have a theory." He flipped to another screen. "See this? It's a private trust account. It's been receiving large deposits for years. And those deposits, they line up with cases where Concord Holdings won lawsuits they should have lost." Maya's pulse quickened. "You're saying?" Aaron nodded. "I'm saying Patterson might have been paid off." Maya leaned back, staring at the ceiling. If this was true, then Patterson wasn't just another judge. He was their judge. And that meant Maya had been walking into a trap since the moment she stepped into that courtroom. Checkmate. Maya knew she needed a new approach. She couldn't just fight this in court. She had to expose them, and that meant playing dirty. She turned to Aaron. "How fast can you leak this to the press?" Aaron blinked. "Wait, you're serious?" Maya's jaw tightened. "They tried to scare me off. That didn't work. Now, we burned them down." Aaron grinned. "I thought you'd never say that." 48 hours later, The headline hit every major news outlet like a nuclear bomb. Major Chicago investment firm tied to corrupt judges, police, and real estate fraud. Whistleblower exposes multi-million-dollar bribery scheme. Within hours, city officials were in full damage control. Federal agents raided Concord Holdings offices. The mayor announced an official investigation. And Judge Patterson, he resigned. Maya stood in front of her grandmother's television, watching the fallout unfold. She should have felt relief. But instead, she felt something else. Something darker. A text message flashed on her phone. Unknown number. You made a mistake, kid. Maya swallowed hard. She had won this round. But the war was far from over. The final move. The world erupted after the Concord Holdings scandal broke. Within 24 hours, news stations ran wall-to-wall coverage of the bribery scheme, the forged evidence, and the connections between the powerful investment firm and government officials. By 48 hours, city officials scrambled to distance themselves. Several members of the city council resigned. Concord Holdings CEO was subpoenaed for questioning. By 72 hours, the FBI officially launched an investigation. And by the end of the week, Judge Patterson was gone. Maya Brooks should have been relieved. She wasn't. Because she knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. A ghost in the system. Maya sat in her grandmother's kitchen, staring at the text message she had received hours earlier. Unknown number. You made a mistake, kid. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Clara sat across from her, watching her granddaughter carefully. You haven't said a word since the news broke. Maya sighed, rubbing her temple. Because something isn't right. Clara raised an eyebrow. You took down a corrupt corporation, Maya. You exposed a federal-level conspiracy. What exactly isn't right about that? Maya drummed her fingers against the table. It was too easy. Clara gave a dry laugh. Sweetheart, that was not easy. No, I mean. Maya hesitated. We caught them off guard. They weren't prepared for this kind of exposure. But these aren't the kind of people who just lose. Clara frowned. So, what are you saying? Maya exhaled. I'm saying there's someone else pulling the strings. And whoever it was, they weren't done with her yet. The setup. The next morning, Maya's phone rang. Aaron. You need to see this, he said before she could even say hello. Maya froze at the urgency in his voice. What happened? Aaron's keyboard clattered in the background. I was watching the fallout from the Concord Holdings scandal. Tracking news sources, government responses, normal stuff. Maya frowned. And then, Aaron continued, I found this. A document popped up in her email. Maya clicked it, and then her blood ran cold. It was a subpoena. For her. Issued by the Department of Justice. Maya's hands trembled as she read the charge. Tampering with evidence. She looked up in shock. Aaron, what the hell is this? Aaron's voice was grim. They're turning this on you. The fall guy. It was a setup. Someone powerful, had manipulated the system to make it look like Maya herself had falsified evidence. The DOJ's case claimed. The documents exposing Concord Holdings had been illegally obtained. Maya had planted false information about Judge Patterson. The leak to the press had been strategically coordinated to frame Concord Holdings for crimes they didn't commit. Maya's stomach twisted. This was their revenge. If Concord Holdings couldn't stop her in the courtroom, they'd destroy her another way. She was officially a suspect in the very scandal she had exposed. The arrest. It happened fast. Maya was walking out of a coffee shop, her mind still reeling from the subpoena, when she saw the black SUVs pull up. Her heart stopped. Two men in suits stepped out. Federal agents. Miss Brooks, one of them said, flashing his badge. We need you to come with us. Maya's fingers tightened around her phone. She wanted to run. She didn't. Because that's what guilty people did. And she was not guilty. Instead, she squared her shoulders and met the agent's gaze. "Am I under arrest?" The agent hesitated. "Not officially." Maya smirked. "Then I'll be bringing my attorney." The agent didn't argue. Because Maya Brooks was no ordinary defendant. She was ready for this fight. Inside the system, the interrogation room was cold. Maya sat across from two federal prosecutors, her hands resting on the table. She refused to look intimidated, because that's what they wanted. The lead prosecutor, Daniel Hargrove, leaned forward, folding his hands. "Miss Brooks, do you know why you're here?" Maya tilted her head. "You're accusing me of fabricating evidence against a corrupt corporation. A corporation that was just raided by the FBI for financial crimes. Does that sound smart to you?" Hargrove didn't react. "What sounds smart is covering your tracks." Maya let out a sharp laugh. "That's rich coming from someone who's clearly acting on behalf of Concord Holdings." The second prosecutor, a woman named Lisa Caldwell, narrowed her eyes. "We're not here to play games, Miss Brooks." Maya leaned back. "Neither am I." Caldwell slid a file across the table. "We have reason to believe that the documents used in your case were obtained through illegal hacking." Maya's expression didn't change. But inside, she felt her stomach drop. "Aaron." They were framing him too. Hargrove continued. "Now we could drag this out. Put you through years of legal battles. Make it impossible for you to work in law again." Caldwell smiled slightly. "Or you could make this easier." Maya met her gaze. "Let me guess. You want me to take a deal?" Caldwell nodded. "Plead guilty to evidence tampering. Take a 5-year suspension from legal work, and we won't pursue federal charges." Maya exhaled. This was a power move. If they couldn't silence her, they'd discredit her, make her radioactive. They wanted her to admit guilt, even if she wasn't guilty at all. She looked between them. "And if I say no?" Hargrove shrugged. "We go to trial." Maya's lips curled. "Then I guess I'll see you in court." Caldwell's expression darkened. Hargrove sighed, standing up. "You're making a mistake." Maya smirked. "No, you are." The final move. That night, Maya met Aaron in an abandoned parking lot. His laptop sat on the hood of his car, files pulled up. "All right, you want to win this. We have one shot." Maya nodded. "Show me what you've got." Aaron turned the screen toward her. "I hacked them." Maya's eyes widened. "What?" "Aaron." "No, listen." Aaron clicked a file. "I didn't touch anything illegal. Just looked." Maya leaned in and froze. Because there, in black and white, was a recorded conversation between Lucas Harper and Daniel Hargrove. Hargrove, the same federal prosecutor trying to bury her. Aaron's voice was quiet. "They planned this, Maya. They set you up from the beginning." Maya's pulse pounded. This was it. The smoking gun. And if they played this right, they weren't just going to win. They were going to burn Concord Holdings to the ground. Maya turned to Aaron, fire in her eyes. "Get me a press conference." 1 week later, the cameras flashed. The world watched. And Maya Brooks stood at the podium. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. Then, she dropped the bomb. Live, on national television. The audio recording played for millions to hear. By the next morning, Concord Holdings was done. Hargrove was fired. And Maya Brooks. She became the most dangerous lawyer in the country. Because now, everyone knew the truth. She never lost. And she never would.